Join us and we can be your local hope dealer.
Inspiration and dedication. I came a long way from sleeping in them pages. I got my life back, I feel amazing. Life's a book, don't get stuck on sad pages. Rainy days with no money, hard work lead to days that are sunny. Looking back, it was all needed. The problems, the pain, the trauma, the grieving. You are now tuned into the prisoner to painter. Prisoner to painter. Hard work, dedication. Rainy days, inspiration. Prisoner to painter.
And now, a word from your local hope dealer.
Because I'm used to being the interview, I'm more nervous when I'm interviewing people. It's like, oh, I don't need to know anything. I just got to talk. I just got to answer questions.
Yeah.
It's much easier. It's much easier.
Okay, we are live.
Awesome. Welcome to the Prisoner to Painter podcast. I'm Nathan McDermott.
And I'm Katie McDermott.
And today joining us is Nigel.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do before we start so people know?
Yeah, I'm a travel documentary filmmaker. Filmmaker in general by trade. Commercials, stuff like that.
Cool.
But yeah, mostly right now travel documentaries.
So you said you make commercials. Is there any that we would know about?
No, not anything significant. It's just, like local, small local brand stuff, like not anything that's really, really huge or anything, but stuff to pay the bills other than the creative work, the fun stuff.
Right.
You like to get lucky and find things that, you actually enjoy doing, but, sometimes you do the fill-in stuff as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, dude, that's super cool. We've had on, and the whole point of this is every walk of life. So we've got cops, we've got every type of person. I think what you do, and I'm like, that'd be something cool to have a guy on that. To me, what it meant was shoot films or what of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, cool.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm on that. I don't think I'm uneducated, but some things I can't even pronounce. You're a cinematographer.
Yeah,
Right.
Cinematographer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things. There's there's a million different names for what I do depending on who you ask.
Okay.
Director of photography, cinematographer. Those are probably the two that are most commonly associated with what I do.
Awesome. Man, do you go to school for that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
Everything is self-taught.
Cool.
All came from just I picked up a camera in high school to film skateboarding.
Okay.
And that's it all just kind of built up from that.
Heck yeah. Hey, some of the most talented people I've ever met in my life never went to school for it. Like me painting cars, her with her artwork, and you just picking up a camera. It's like most people that are very talented just have a knack for it. You don't go to school for it.
You can learn anything online now.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're really dedicated to something and you understand that it's a two-part process and part of it's getting out there and actually doing the thing and not just getting stuck learning things online. If you can go ahead and marry the two, then you'll be okay just the same way anybody that went to college for it is.
Right, and practice is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not going to get better if you don't keep doing it.
Well, like
exactly.
application without works. It's like just because you're reading it, if you don't apply it, it doesn't matter. It's never going to work for you.
You can have infinite knowledge, but if you don't do the technical side of it, I don't think it's going to be beneficial.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have to. I mean, you have to screw up. That's really the whole thing is you got to go out there and make mistakes, and that's what is going to pin a lot of things in your head. It's like, okay, that's never going to happen again. I can never let that happen again. When you're doing a shoot, and especially when you're shooting documentaries, you can't run everything back. I've had scenarios where there have been important things that were missed, for whatever reason, whether it was equipment failure or whatever it may be, and you can't really run it back.
No, like it's good.
Yeah. So, when you make those kinds of mistakes and the reason why you made that mistake, you're not going to do it again.
Geez. We had one cut out, and yours is a little different, but cutting out like an hour and 30. I'm like, oh my God, it's like my favorite part of the episode. I'm like, well, that's gone. Like, we can't see that.
Yeah.
It's like,
You can hear it.
you can hear it, but I'm like, it took away too much that I wanted.
All right. Do you want to
Yeah,
get us started?
Yeah, but we never did that again, like you said. We never did that again. No.
Yeah.
So here we start off. If for people who haven't seen it, because I haven't getting new followers, start from childhood to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any question that I ask that you don't like, we can move right along.
Okay.
If anything makes you uncomfortable, there's no agenda, there's no hidden whatever. It's your episode, your story. So if there's stuff you don't like or stuff you want to say, feel free. So,
No, pretty open book. So
Awesome.
I can't imagine there's anything that bother me too much.
Gotcha. So, and I say that because it's like I certain questions. Nothing goes too deep because, like I said, there's no agenda. Like there's no political backing or like there's some people we've had on. I could have asked some questions that I really wanted to, but that wasn't the type of podcast I'm going after.
Yeah.
So where were you born and raised, and what did mom and dad do for work?
I was born and raised right here.
Awesome.
Mom was was the secretary for the most part, and dad worked the hotel business in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent lots of time. My dad, when I was pretty young, moved to Florida first, and then New York. He worked at a hotel near Times Square for most of my life.
Cool.
So yeah, I go back and forth for the summers. I spend in New York with my dad, and spent most of my life growing up here in Jackson.
Awesome. Were mom and dad split up then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That answers is I don't ask questions before, but that puts some stuff into perspective for my later questions.
Yeah.
So, well, your dad must have been successful then. It sounds like it, like to be managing hotels or to move around with hotels.
Oh, no, I mean, he was managing just the bellhops and stuff like that. So
Okay.
it's mostly the guys that do bags and stuff like that. But it's a union gig that pays really well. You know what I mean? So it's one of those types of jobs where he got sick with cancer, and when he got sick and through his recovery, he was still getting paid the entire time. Kept his job the entire time.
Cool.
Just because of the protection that they have. So it's comfy enough for him to live in New York, which is not cheap.
Yeah. Well, and I say that because I'm like, to do anything in a hotel in New York to me seems successful.
Yeah.
Like, that's a revolving door of people.
No, I mean, he did okay. It's not like he was like the hotel managing everybody in the hotel of his department.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
Man, that's really cool. I find neat stuff in like that's cool to me. Like that's really cool.
It's one of those jobs that's good enough that people hold it for their lives. The guys that he worked with for 20, 30 years. So it's a good enough job that people don't leave it.
Yeah.
Well, hospitality is a broad field, and the people in it live for that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome, man. How would you describe your childhood in a whole?
I mean, pretty chill. I went to Napoleon, which is, as a very, very small area. I mean, there's like less than 1,500 people that went there. There were less than 200 people in my graduating class. So it's pretty much living in the middle of nowhere. Life was pretty easy. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. We weren't poor, we weren't rich or anything like that. We, definitely, struggled financially, but as far as I was a pretty simple kid. I grew up skateboarding, and as long as I had that was really the only concern.
Gotcha.
My mom supported my hobbies, so when now I look back and realize that it was probably difficult for her, but I mean she made sure that when I started having an interest in things that she supported those things, so didn't have too many complaints in that department. And like I said, went back and forth between Michigan and New York in the summertime.
Yeah.
Where did you skate at? Did you skate like Nixon?
Yep, Nixon. I mean, I started skating originally in New York City. My dad worked second shift, so he would be gone from like 11 until like 9 p.m. or something. It'd be like 12 hours because the commute downtown would be like 11 to 11 usually. So we'd be there. I'd just be bored sitting around. We'd just leave, and go, just go walk around the area. My brother and I would like take a train downtown and go walk around Times Square. And I was in like 7th grade, 8th grade. So he would have been like 5th grade, 6th grade. We're just wandering around New York City.
The subway. I've always wanted to know.
I mean, I've never had any problems. It's one of those things where it's like you hear lots of stories and like you're never surprised, but I've never seen anything like too crazy or anything like that. The craziest thing that I ever saw actually was like when I was working in Times Square, and on the commute one morning, like I mean, we're talking like before 8 a.m., like around 8 a.m. I'm on the train. and a whole ass fucking mariachi band got out and started performing at 8 a.m. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like the whole get up, like a full stand-up bass, like a full stand-up bass. That's one of the craziest, as far as like things that happen on the train, that's one of the most like, are you kidding me? And the thing is, it's like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., I would have been like, oh, here we go. And like 8 a.m., I was like, oh, like, I hope they're just going someplace, is what I thought at first. And then once they started playing, I'm like, oh, this is too early.
Here,
Better than coffee, I guess.
wake you up. Funny, that's funny. So what's your favorite memory of childhood?
Gosh, I mean, it's probably just like the general memory of skating in the city growing up.
Oh.
You know, it was, you know, like family memories were all like good and fun. There's not like one specific one, but they're like the general memories that everybody has. But like the real, you know, formative thing that I can think of is, you know, having that, you know, that difference of being someplace where there's less than 1,500 people living in the entire town.
Yeah.
To the largest city in America.
Yeah.
You know, being able, you know, like there was such a difference between going to New York and being, you know, at Napoleon.
Yeah.
That's, you know, it's usually like the biggest memory that sticks out was just like, oh, and I had like the same group of friends out there that I maintained.
Oh, cool.
You know, so it was like, you know, it was like getting to go see my other group of friends and getting to skate with them for the summer. It was always just those, you know, it was like a different, it's like a different like memory almost, you know, where it's like, you know, like there's like, I can't draw a through line in a year where it's like, oh, this year all of this stuff happened in high school in Napoleon and this stuff happened in the summer. It's like there was the summer, you know, of like 2001 to 2006, and then there's just like 2001 to 2006. They're like completely different conglomerated memories in my brain. So
I didn't even think about that. Good question.
Yeah.
How was it? Did you go out there the summer of 2001, or did the attack happen while you were there or after you came back?
Oh, I was at school at the time, so I was here in school, and we couldn't, you know, it's like I mean, it was probably the same for everybody else my age, where it was, you know, everything stopped, every class was just turn on the TV and you're just watching what's happened. You know, your teachers are all aware that what you're seeing is history, so they're not, you know, teaching any lessons that day.
No.
And we just, my brother and I pretty much had free reign because they knew that our dad was in New York, so we pretty much had free reign to go down to the office and try to get a hold of our dad. You could not get a single call through to New York City, any place in New York City. Okay. It was just a busy signal trying to call anybody because it was such a such a huge anybody with a relative in the country was trying to call their relatives in New York City to make sure they were okay. And my dad was okay. Good. You know, he's, you know, that's not an area in the city that, you know, we really were ever frequently near or anything like that. But yeah, I was in school in, I think 7th grade or 8th. Yeah, 7th grade, I believe.
See, I was pretty young when it happened, and I remember the teachers turned the TV on, and then we were so young that they were like, well, you're not going to watch the whole thing with us, but there's something serious going on. They called the parents to come pick us up.
Yeah. Say when you're a little bit younger, it's a little too serious, probably. Middle school, they're like, yeah, you can, you know.
You can watch this.
Yeah.
Our age, same thing. It's like, go home. Like,
We weren't allowed to go out on recess. They called our parents. We had to wait for our parents to come get us.
Yeah. And traveling to New York afterwards was
nightmare.
Yeah, it was such a nightmare.
What is your least favorite memory?
Least favorite memory. I don't know, probably like moving.
What?
You know, we moved for the first time to, you know, we moved originally from Napoleon to Big Rapids because my mom went back to college. She went to Ferris State. And moving from Ferris State back to Napoleon was like, you know, it was really not, you know, like any kid that's ever moved like in the middle of school, like not like, you know, you haven't been there for a year or anything like that. You've been there for like 3 years and you've got all of your friends and stuff like that. And the thought of going to a new school and having to make new friends and not knowing anybody and stuff like that. Not necessarily like the worst thing ever, but one of the things that always stands out is like, understanding that, I mean, kind of being taught that at a young age that a lot of people are just kind of in your life, for that period of time. And, you can like cherish those memories and everything like that. But, things kind of move on whether you want them to or not.
It sucks, man. I moved from Dollarville, so I get it.
Yeah.
Moving in the middle of a school year is the worst thing for a kid. It is terrible. I hate it. I hate it every second.
Yeah.
But
And my parents, like, they divorced when I was like 2, so I don't remember that, or anything like that, so it wasn't, growing up, you didn't really have anything awful happen or anything.
Good. That's good. I mean, ultimately having a good childhood, like, it's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't necessarily like raised the best, I kind of had free reign to do whatever I wanted, there was very, very offhands parenting, but I also don't have, bad memory, like lots of people, like high school was like some of the worst years of their life. High school was pretty cool.
It really was.
2 questions. Were you a latchkey kid? Like you could just stay home, lock the door, or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you have a pet? And then what kind if you did?
I did not have any pets growing up. I didn't have any pets until I was an adult.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
What pets did you have as an adult?
I had a couple cats and a dog, and I had to give the dog away, unfortunately, because I moved someplace where I couldn't have a dog. But I still see him on Facebook all the time. So, like I gave him to somebody that I knew, that wanted him. So
we always ask that because you look like a dog or a cat person, but sometimes we get something wild.
Like I was like tarantula.
Never mind. That's not as cool.
I always wanted a dog as a kid. Mom was always like, "No, it's too much work for me. I'm not doing it. I know you're not gonna do it. So we're not, we're not getting a dog." And then, when I was older, I was like scared of dogs for a while, so I got bit by a dog. And was like, don't dislike dogs, but like I'm wary of them.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened at some point, like late in high school or early adulthood. I was just like realized that dogs like really like me.
Yeah.
I was like I've always been that person where they're like, oh, that dog doesn't like anybody. They're letting you pet them. They always like all kinds of dogs. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I didn't like anybody that loved me. Yeah. So.
Do you have a scar from being bit? Like, is it like serious?
No, it wasn't a serious one or anything like that. It was just young enough age that it bothered me.
Sorry about that. I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, god dang it, that never happens. I apologize. Jeez. Well, some kids can get pinched, and it's like the worst thing that ever happened to them. That's why she had, because like a dog bite's a dog bite, but I mean, some shit like
I get mauled or
Also, like a scientist at Hart, and like they did like the little Albert experiment where like they exposed him to rats and like loud noises. So then he was like terrified of anything white and fluffy, bunnies, rats, Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So it was just curiosity.
Yeah, no, it was just an early enough experience, that it was scary enough that it was just like I was wary of them. Dogs are always depicted wonderfully on TV, so I wasn't like, oh, I'm done with dogs or anything. Like I still like dogs. I just assumed they didn't like me.
Right.
Like I'll keep my distance,
I like them from afar.
They're cute, but
what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh man, so there's so many. It depends. It's like different ages. You're into different stuff. So it's like I have so many memories of so many different cartoons that were like my favorites at different periods of time. But definitely like the original generation one, like Transformers. Like I watched lots of Transformers and like G.I. Joes from the 80s.
who's your favorite Transformer or Decepticon?
It's Starscream.
Yeah.
Yeah, Starscream. Starscream. So it's like it started from a young age with like being able to identify like actors and stuff like that. I have this stupid encyclopedic memory for movie trailers. People be like, "Oh, have you seen this movie? I can't think of the name." I'm like, "Oh, with this actor and this actor, it's about this." And they'll be like, "Yeah." I'm like, "No, I've never seen it." Yeah.
In a world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just had an encyclopedic memory for movie trailers. I think that like originally like being able to identify actors and stuff like that, it started with that because Starscream, the guy that was the voice actor for Starscream, I from a kid was like, oh, that's the same voice as the voice from Cobra Commander in the
Yep.
G.I. Joe cartoon.
Oh,
So I was like, I like Starscream right away just because I knew it was this. I knew that the voice actor was the same when I was a kid. That was really like the earliest like favorite cartoon that I can remember though.
wild me because I didn't even know Tom Kenny voiced SpongeBob until like 3 years ago.
stop.
I really did.
He's also Ice King and Heifer.
It never registered to me. Like I don't know why. I just watched cartoons and then that was it. Like I didn't care anymore about it. But I guess that's the difference. That's why you do what you do, and I do what what I do. No, really. I mean that people's brain works different. That's why people do different things.
Yeah.
I'm just there for the haha, and then some people go further. But
I believe Optimus Prime was also one of the deep voice early 2000s, like the Inner World, where blah 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 blah.
He was definitely notable for Optimus Prime, but did more than that. I mean, they brought him back to do Optimus Prime however many years later, But yeah, I had the cartoon movie or whatever on VHS where like he died or whatever. Spoiler alert. I was like, sorry, it's a spoiler from 1987.
Oh man. So you attended Napoleon.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite teacher and a favorite subject?
Favorite subject was probably military history with Mr. Boer.
Okay.
That was probably my favorite subject. And then my favorite teacher was Mrs. Crocker. She was my homeroom teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, she was one of those teachers that just like kind of really, really like loved us. Like the one like her kids. Like she would really annoy her. She really didn't have a reputation as being like a teacher that people generally liked.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's like 4 years, after 4 years with us, it was like really, she was like she's like a second mom pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, definitely her.
I was about to say teachers you see during the school year, you see them just as much as you see your mom or your dad. You see them just as much.
Yep, absolutely.
Or more.
Ward says hi.
Ward.
Yep.
Oh, hey.
He says everybody likes you, not just dogs. And then he wants to know how wrestling as a youth affected your work ethic as an adult.
It was definitely, so I was pretty fortunate that it falls in line with skateboarding. So it's like both of the things that I did growing up kind of teach you that you're going to fail more than you succeed. But getting that big success that you really want requires all of those small failures. And as Ward knows, if you're practicing with people that are good, you ideally are practicing with people better than you. Mm-hmm. You're getting your ass kicked for 5 days of the week. Yeah. You're getting your ass kicked for 5 days of the week just so that you can kick ass on 1 day of the week. So that's kind of how life is you got to get your ass kicked, like five times just for the one time that, the success jumps you above all of that,
Well, that's the mentality. Hang out with 7 millionaires, you'll be the 8th. Hang out with 7 bums, you'll be the 8th. It's like, train with better people. You're gonna get your ass kicked, but you will be the next good one.
And I mean, skateboarding is more individual, but it's the same thing where it's like you're gonna fall more than you land the trick. Like more often than not, you're gonna hit the ground, 20, 30 times before you land the trick that you're trying to land. So it's lots of the same where you have to get very, very comfortable with failure, and that is pretty important, I think, in being successful in anything.
Awesome.
Were you into like the X Games and all that, like watching them?
Yeah, that was the time period. You know what I mean? Like that was what got me into it was like that was when the X Games was really at its biggest. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater had just come out, and it's one of the biggest video games and one of the best video games.
Oh yeah.
So it was like the combination of the X Games being huge on ESPN, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater being something that I played all the time. Yeah,
it's huge.
And then, like I said, wandering around the city when my dad was at work, I would always walk down to the same park, this plaza, not a skate park, but just like a street plaza, where there was always skaters there skating, and I would just sit there and watch them for hours. And it was eventually like, okay, Dad, you got to buy me a skateboard. And that's like the end of it,
Who was your favorite professional skater?
Oh, when I was really, really my first earliest professional skateboarder, favorite professional skateboarder was Heath Kirchart, definitely.
Okay.
It's one of those things that your skating tastes change with age,
Mhm.
you know, but he's a pretty solid favorite.
Did you ever like Bam Margera?
You got that.
I gotta ask.
Yeah, I mean, so like when you were, I was there to have seen him go from like pre Jackass to the heights of of his popularity and everything like that, and we always loved him,
I
up to,
like that one, man.
but it was also like being, like even if you don't necessarily know exactly what's going on, even from like a younger age, and I was in high school, but even from a younger age, when stuff like is bullshit, so it's like he jumped the shark, as they say.
Yeah.
It became a point where you're like, yo, like you can do whatever he wants as far as the shenanigan goes, but once the skate footage dries up, once there's no skateboarding going on, you're like, yo, what? He's a loser.
He's a
He's
loser.
a poser. Like he's selling more boards than anybody, but he's not riding his board. Like once you identify that as a kid, you know that's the jig is up basically at that point. So
That's why I was asking that, because he reminds me of Rob Dyrdek in the terms of they're famous more in other areas
Than they were for
skateboarding.
Yeah.
It's like they're skateboarders, but they're not. Like they're not really.
Rob, for his part, contributed a lot more to skateboarding.
Okay.
In terms of the culture,
Mhm.
and he didn't. Like when he was done being identified as a skateboarder, he was done being identified as a skateboarder. Whereas Bam was done being a skateboarder and continued to reap the benefits, and it was beneficial for his sponsors and everything as well. But yeah.
Oh, I cannot remember the name of the movie. How do you feel that movie talking about how they got the X Games and they were surfers but they skateboarded and it had Shia LaBeouf in it? Something dogs.
You got me. I don't know.
But it's talking about how they started the X Games.
I don't know, dude.
How the Lords of Dog did it.
Oh yeah, no, that's about I saw that in theaters when I was in high school. That was not about the start of the S Games, but just about skateboarding and its popularity and stuff. Actually, yeah, it's got Heath Ledger in it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love Heath Ledger.
There you go. Yeah.
But I'm just curious because if it represented correctly things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where one of the guys that was helping like direct it and everything was one of the people that was being portrayed in the movie, who's also a documentary director who made the first skate videos and everything like that. So it pretty much stuck to things. Obviously it sensationalized some things to a degree, but as far as like how things actually progressed, yeah, it covered it pretty realistically.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to high school and then we'll get into what you're doing after that. But question before that, did you ever plan on attending like pursuing skateboarding, or did it dry up after high school?
No, I was never going to be like, I knew I was never like good enough.
Okay.
Like I skated with enough people around and saw like the level that I knew like skateboarding was never going to be
Kind of a hobby then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just like, I just loved it and stuff like that. But it's like when you skate with some people that are the same age that are like that much better, or you meet up with with somebody who's like way younger, who's way better, you're just immediately like, yeah, no, that's not, it's not gonna happen,
Yeah, well, and then sometimes when you find something you love, it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't love it enough, so I'm not going to train harder at it. Because I get that.
Well, I also I made skate videos at first. That was how I got into film and stuff like that in general.
Okay.
So that was more of something that I had considered pursuing. That was kind of in line with what I was doing and still do now.
Right.
So that kind of was the idea. Was like, oh, maybe I'll get to like work and make skate videos for a professional company. Like I'm sure that was a thought, but not ever actually like it was like after the first like year or two, I knew like there's no like definitely not going to be a professional skateboarder.
Like this is fun, but I'm not going to
Yeah. I started pretty late, all things considered.
Yeah, you're right. You see some kids fucking 4 years old riding skateboards.
In like California and Florida where you can skate year round, you know what I mean? Too, like those places, like you definitely get way better than when you can only skate like 6 months out.
Yeah, 6 months you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have a normal high school experience, meaning prom, homecoming dances, etc.?
For the most part, I kind of, like I did lots of. I mean, I wouldn't say like I wasn't popular. But I got along with everybody. Like everybody, everybody liked me for the most part. I don't have problems with anybody in, you know, in my grade for the most part. So, you know, it was pretty typical, you know, high school. You know, I had to deal with racism, if anything, you know, because going to Napoleon at the time, there was only me and 2 other half black kids in my graduating class.
Gotcha.
So that was something that I had to deal with. I, you know, like I definitely beat some kids up for calling me the N-word and shit like that, but not really anything, you know, like high school, there's lots of partying and skateboarding pretty much, you know, it was like, yeah, it was getting through the day so that you could skate and getting through the week so that you could party on the weekend. You know, it was really my high school experience.
So with
I know that's right.
that difference in like New York and like being in the country here, do you prefer like the city downtown or like the countryside?
Oh, I prefer the city, definitely. That's not like, you know, you know, different strokes for different folks. Different people come away with different experiences. My younger brother spent almost as much time in the city as I did and hates it. You know, not for him at all. He wants to live in the country and have a bunch of property and stuff like that. And you know, my dad, you know, as somebody who lived in the city for a long time, always told me it was something that you're gonna, you know, you'll outgrow your, you know, your want to live in the city. Trust me. He felt like he got stuck there, you know, and no, it hasn't at all. Like I still, you know, I travel a lot. I try to go to the city at least once a year to see my friends still.
Awesome.
You know, it's very, very much, you know, whether here or there, or where I'd rather be.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I would like to move, you know, if I'm going to be in Michigan, I'd like to move to Detroit, you know, I'm working on trying to move in that direction. But yeah, definitely a city person.
It's funny you say that, man, because we like the city, but if we could just have a bigger yard in the city, like we want to live in the city, but we want more than our little one plot, you know?
It's like the best of both worlds. Like I want to be able to be close to everything and be like, oh, we can just walk downtown. But I also want a giant yard with like flowers and like I can hide in my yard and nobody can bother me. I can't see the cars from my backyard.
Yeah, that would be too hard for money-wise to find that in a city. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, some people like their outdoor space. I prefer, you know, like as you said, I like feeling like life is right outside the door. You know, like I like feeling like there's opportunity right outside the door. I hate having to own a vehicle. I like driving, which is weird. Like I love driving.
Yeah.
Like going on road trips.
Yeah.
I love driving on the open road. I hate having to just like commute from point A to point B with a car. Yeah. You know, I would much rather just like sit down and then look at my phone or play a video game for a second and look up and I'm there.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ward just wanted to say out here, which is cool. I know you guys went to school together. It's funny. It's kind of a small world here. That's Katie's cousin.
Oh,
yeah. It's a small world, but Seattle, you can be close to the city and the country. Well, okay, well, Seattle rains all the time, though.
Yeah.
I don't want to say where.
Yeah, I've got friends that just moved out of Seattle. Everybody I know lives in Portland. I'm actually visiting Portland next month.
Portland's like the big thing, right?
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I just know a lot of people from Portland somehow, like just meeting up with lots of people from all over the place, and they happen to live in Portland.
That place rains like London, I've heard. Like it just rains all the time.
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Skittles used to live by there, but well, my friend Chris, we met on Xbox when we were 12, but
That's awesome.
Yeah, named Skittles to me still. Do you think school prepared you for what comes after? Like did it get ready for the real world?
Not as much as it should have. You know, that's for sure. Like, if anything, like I mean. You know, it's tough because it's like, yeah, sure, like I learned how to read and write and shit like that, you know, but it was like not really like a lot. I didn't get any of my interests from school.
Yeah.
You know, I did learn from extracurriculars. You know, like I said, you know, I learned from wrestling and things like that. But in general, school didn't really prepare me any more than people who don't go to school. You know, I think that it teaches you. I think if anything, it's just the interacting. Yeah. You know, having interaction. You know, socializing. That's the biggest takeaway.
Yep.
But otherwise, no. Like most of the stuff I learned, I either didn't retain or it wasn't important.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an idiot. You know, fortunately, you
Yeah.
know, like most of, you know, like lots of people go through the same amount of school and are still like very stupid. So I, you know, at least retained, you know, some sense of curiosity. And, you know, I don't know if that came from school, but I assume not because lots of people went through the same thing and are idiots.
Ward said Napoleon, where N stands for knowledge.
He also said we both know Dan McCarty and that he lived in Portland a while and he randomly ran into him in Seattle. So,
Oh wow, that's totally random.
Yeah.
So this brings back nostalgia. If I did my research, my research is just looking at your Facebook. I'm going to be honest.
Extensive research.
Yeah, no, it's not extensive. It's just normal research. It says you were a sales associate at Toys R Us.
Yeah, for a long time.
How was that?
Yeah.
I worked at Toys R Us for some years. I worked at Toys R Us here at the one in Jackson at the mall for a couple of years, and then I transferred down to South Carolina and worked opening up a brand new Toys R Us Babies R Us. So like worked like stocking it and preparing it like for like a few months, getting it ready for like the grand opening.
Cool.
Yeah, no, it was lots of fun. It was like one of those things where I was right at that period where you could see online retail was starting to take over, and it was like you could see that this company is not navigating it the way that they need to, you know. But I worked in the electronics department, and for the most part, for a long time, I did some overnight stocking. It was lots of fun, but it was also the worst. You know, like it's one of those things where it's like for every interaction with an excited kid, which is like the best, or just like an excited parent, the best, you're gonna have like 3 or 4 of like angry
Crying kids.
people. No, not kids. The kids are the kids are always way better behaved than adults.
Yeah.
Kids, if you are if you are in the service industry of any kind, kids are always going to be way better behaved than adults. Because even if the kid isn't behaved, it's the fucking adult's fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like kids, you know, like kids I never had a problem with. Like it's always adults that are, you know, like feel like they're entitled to whatever it is that they came in to get. And if they don't have it and you can't get it, it's your fault as the guy that's making minimum wage. You know, so it's like people just liking to feel like they're above somebody in some way.
Yeah.
You know, like, dude, like it's the worst in the holiday season because it would regularly be like they would send out those flyers and it would say this item's on sale, and we would get like 2 of them on the truck, and they'd be like, all right, so hold these 2 in the back until like that day. So it's like the first 2 people would get whatever item was on sale. And then you'd have people coming in all week wanting that. They're mad at you for not having it in stock. I'm like, look, I don't make the toys in the back.
Yeah.
I didn't give up and stop stuffing these damn stuffed animals. You know, like I didn't, you know, take it easy. Like all I'm here to do is sell you the stuff we got in the back, and I'm sorry it's not there.
Yeah, we don't have elves back there making stuff, guys. You know?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So is that what you did right out of high school? Is got a job at Toys R Us?
I worked at a couple of pizza places at first.
Okay.
I worked at like the Beach Bar in Clark Lake was my first job in high school.
Did you ever work at Pizza Time in Napoleon?
No.
Okay.
I have friends that worked there.
Yeah, okay.
And then I worked at Hungry Howie's in Brooklyn when they first opened up. And then I think Toys R Us was right after that.
Gotcha. My mom and dad lived right down on Benton Road. And,
I lived on North Stony Lake.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
So my mom and dad, when I was like 18, being a shit, I think it was right around that time that Pizza Time closed down.
Mm-hmm.
But Pizza Time would go over to BP and they'd let me buy beer. And because I call on my dad's account. So they bring beer back.
That's scary.
They would, and they never ID me. And I was like, this place is not going to be around long because if I'm doing it, I think other kids are too.
Man, that's brilliant. The ways that we buy alcohol.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Oh, probably deciding that I didn't need a day job and going full time as a travel documentary filmmaker, being like, hey, if you can pay me the bare minimum, if I can make, you know, almost as much money as I'm making at my current job, then I will quit my job. You know, so it's like, hey, even if I gotta in 4 or 5 months, you know, roughly when I'm done with this, even if I have to immediately find something else, then still it was, you know, a way to build up a big resume pretty quick.
Well, that's damn cool. Like, I don't know how your line of work works, but it seems like something like that would get you a job. Like,
Yeah.
in the future, it seems like that would just get you another job.
Ideally, yeah, that's what the hope is. You know, that's what the hope is. That's why I took up, you know, all of the responsibility, and you know, it was like, you know, we can make it happen for pretty cheap if I do way more work than I'm being paid for, essentially. You know,
And work hard now so you don't have to as much later. I mean,
yeah. You know, I was like, if I can point to this, you know, to the series and be like, yeah, I made all of the original music myself. I did all of the editing. I did all of the sound work and all of the shooting, and you know, directed essentially, and you know, helped produce. Like, you know, if I can do that for, you know, 5 episodes, then that's a pretty good resume to build up in less than a year.
Cool.
So what genre or like content type did you start with?
Like I said, mostly it's skateboarding. Like I skated when I was, you know, when I was in high school. I got a camera and started making skate videos, and I would also, like, people would pay me like in high school to do like their projects for them. So like if there was a project that was like a video project, people would have me like shoot it and edit it for them. So I was the only person at the time that knew how to do that in high school. So I did lots of that through high school until my camera broke. You know, like, you know, shortly after I graduated. I wanted to go to film school, but like my parents were just kind of, you know, daunted by how much it would, you know, be, without like really looking into like, you know, community college or student loans or anything like that. They're just kind of like, yeah, film school's tough. I don't know. So I didn't really do anything because that was what I had my heart set on.
So, well, that's kind of a cornered market anyways. Like, even now, it doesn't seem like there's many people that do what you do.
More so than, it's more accessible than ever, and there's a higher demand than ever, just from, you know, like YouTube content creators and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know, so more so than before.
Yeah, but it seems like there's a big difference. We are not what you do. We just put a camera up on a stick and let it look at it. No, but really though, it seems like what you're doing is in higher demand because there's more people like us than like you.
Yeah, in general, I mean, yes, there are going to be more people that want to create content that don't have that skill set. You know, I built up, you know, not just the film stuff, but like I made music for a while, and, you know, worked with, you know, made rap music, produced beats and stuff like that. You know, worked with lots of other artists because I was producing beats. I'd record their vocals. I'd mix and master their vocals. I did, you know, through the pandemic, did stupid sketches and Twitch throughout YouTube, or throughout the pandemic, YouTube stuff. So it was like all of those skills together over the course of that whole 15 years or something like that kind of put me in the position that I'm in now.
Oh. Yeah, let me get that. Oh, thank you, Nigel. Dude. Okay, well, this is why we shoot it live. This is why shit like this. I want to show the world that it's like nothing's perfect.
Yeah,
Nothing's perfect. You know, it's like so like on TV, all the makeup and it looks perfect. You're like behind the scenes. We try to show you a little bit about the nonsense.
Oh, that's the same with, you know, what I do. I'm editing, you know, one of the episodes that we shot in Greece earlier this year. Cool. And I keep, you know, like there are times when the guys make mistakes, and I like to keep that stuff in, you know, because it's funny, you know, it humanizes them. Like, you know, like we had a friend that we met in Panama who's a chef and owns several restaurants down there, came with us to Greece. Cool. And went behind the scenes at this fancy restaurant in Greece, like cooking with them and stuff like that. And then they're enjoying the meal afterwards, talking about how good something is. And the camera person that we have working with us, she's Greek and from the area. And so they're just like calling this thing the wrong thing over and over again. They're saying it's white sauce and it's yogurt, and they're over and over again just talking about how delicious it is. She says, "Guys," and she's just like, "Guys, sorry, I have to stop you. It's not white sauce, it's yogurt. I swear, if you call it white sauce again, I'm gonna kill you." So it's like I had to keep that in there. It's like, even though, like, you know, it's like you gotta be humble. You know what I mean? Like, even though this is a chef, You know, and it's a chef, you know, who has several restaurants making this mistake. It's also like, yeah, but like everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, like it's funny. You know, like if you can't laugh at it, then what's the point?
Exactly.
So when you quit your job to start doing it full time, were you still doing the skate videos, or did you kind of like progress to other things?
I got back into, so I guess like, you know, I skipped several steps because I quit skateboarding for a long time. You know, like life happens or whatever, you get a little bit older. So I didn't really skate at all for most of my 20s. The pandemic happened. After the pandemic, and when the pandemic happened, like I was in a place where I was like fucking thrilled about it. I'm like, you mean like I don't have to go anywhere? I don't have to do
I
anything.
feel that.
You know, like this is gonna be awesome. Like I don't want to do shit, you know. And by the time it was over, I was like, you know, like right before the pandemic, my mom passed away unexpectedly, and then the pandemic happened. So it's like a combination of like mom passed away randomly, and then I got locked inside for a couple of years. I was like, wow, I need to get out into the world. You know, I gotta go see the world. You know, I gotta go do my thing. I need to get into shape. I am fucking way out of shape. And the only way I'm going to get into shape is if I start skateboarding again, because I'm not going to go to the gym. It's going to be like, I'll get bored with it and I'll quit. You know, like I'll be like everybody else when New Year starts, where it's like you hit it like 3 times hard and then you're like, I'm good.
Yeah,
you know, I was like, if I skateboard again, then I'll get back into, I'll just, you know, get back into a groove and get healthy that way. And I'll just take it easy. I won't skate super hard, you know, just, you know, chill. And after I got back into skating, was immediately like, oh, like I need to film stuff. Like that's part of this whole thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I need to make skate videos again. You know, it wasn't just that. You know, it felt like I was doing half of the thing. It felt empty.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was skateboarding, but I was always making skate videos while I was skateboarding. So I had to make skate videos too. And that was when I got back into, you know, working with a camera. And that was also how I met the person that facilitated, you know, everything that we're doing now. He's a skater as well.
Awesome. Real quick before we start asking more about your cinematography, it says somewhere in here, did you sell skateboard or surfboards in New York?
Skateboards.
Skateboards.
It was that was what I said when I worked in Times Square. It was Billabong / Element Skateboard. It was a split store, so it was like because Billabong and Element were under the same ownership.
Okay.
So it was like half of there was like divider in the middle, where it was like that half is the Billabong half, and then there's the Element half. I worked in the skate shop half. So
I didn't know who they were. I wrote it down on my phone. I never heard it. I didn't know.
Even surfboards he was telling me about, I was like, in New York?
Yeah. It's like they owned like Nixon watches and Billabong and Oakley sunglasses and Plan B skateboards and Element skateboards.
Wow.
So it was just like a flagship store for all of those brands essentially.
Okay.
But the front facing ones were Billabong and Element.
Yeah. Okay, cool, man. That can be cool. Yeah, well, I tried to learn a person's story in order. It never goes that way, but I tried.
Yeah, I tend to jump around anything. I have ADHD, so it's like, you know, naturally you're gonna jump from one thing to the next.
Well, then I forgot that.
Yeah.
I go back, I'm like, oh shit, reminded me of whatever. Yeah. Okay, man. Well, I think I'm getting to where you are now. So, what got you into this line of work? Like doing.
Yeah, I guess got back into skateboarding and started making, you know, wanting to make skate videos again. And well, when I got back into skating originally, I also knew that like I would have the same problem where I had tried to get back into skating a couple of times when fall started, because when you haven't skated for a while, you skate the first couple of times and you are so sore.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to keep skating, you know. But it's like I've also known, because like when I moved back to New York, when I worked at Element and Billabong, and I started skating with my friends again, I was so sore. But like my friends in New York, it's not like friends in Michigan are like, oh, like that's cool, man. Like, will you come out next time? And they'll just stop hitting you up eventually when you're not going to come anymore. But in New York, they're just going to fucking roast you until you come. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, so it was like there was no like, no, man, I'm too sore to skate. There's just like, yo, this fucking pussy.
Yeah.
He's too sore. You know what I mean? So, you know, so it's like, all right. So I learned from that if you still go out every day, regardless of whether or not you're sore, and skate through it, eventually you will warm up, and eventually you'll stop being sore, and then you'll never be sore again. Like, you know, it'll just go away. So when I went to get back into skateboarding, there was this event going on in Arizona called Slow Impact. That was like a social a social event that was also a skateboarding event, but it was like an educational event with panels and things like that. It talked about skateboarding, but also would talk about different societal issues and educational things and stuff like that, art and things. And it was like a several day event. So I'm like, oh, I'll just go back there. I'll go to this event and I'll basically like trial by fire. Like I know, like if I skate every single day, I'll be sore and I'll skate through it. And then when I come home, I'll keep it going. So I went to that the first year in Arizona. I met my friend Jack, who was a coder and a tech guy who lived in California, was originally from Chicago. The second year that Slow Impact happened, the first year when I shot a little edit of it on just with my phone, like I bought like a rig for my phone and had like a nice microphone and stuff like that I had from doing YouTube stuff. So I did an edit for it, and then the next year when I came out, I had an actual camera, and it was like fully kitted out and stuff like that, and met up with Jack again, and Jack's like, oh wow, that's a nice camera. So I did another edit, he saw that, and like a few months after that, like not even 6 months later, it was around July or something like that of last year, Jack hit me up and was like, or not even hit me up, but he just announced that he was going to Norway. He was going to Svalbard, Norway, this island that is like the closest settled settlement closest to the North Pole that you can go to essentially and still get a hotel. You can go all the way out to Svalbard and you can get a hotel there. That's where they've got the fucking the seed bank, the global seed vault or whatever. Yeah, it's all the way up. Like I said, like when I saw it on a map, I was like, holy crap, like that's way up there.
That's up there.
And and he announced that he's, like I said, he's a linguist also. And he announced that he was doing something where he's preserving language data with the Arctic World Archive, which is another one that's like the seed bank, where they have a vault that's like 300 meters down in a coal mine where they preserve data, for the end of the world or whatever the case may be. And so Jack wanted to preserve language data, from all kinds of different languages and endangered languages that are dying out and everything like that. And he had gotten the go-ahead to do that. It was going out to Norway to shoot, to do that. And about a month later, he was like, it'd be cool if I could get some funding to do a documentary for this. If I could, would you want to shoot it and edit it? And I was like, yeah, for sure. And it was definitely an act like you've been there before situation where it's like, yeah, I know I could. Like I was in post-production for another documentary that I had just shot. That's still in post-production because it's been like a ride ever since Norway. But I had done enough where it's like, yeah, I know how to edit. I can tell a story. Yeah, I can do this in theory. Like in theory, I can do this. Yeah. So, so we started getting ready to do that right away. It was like, having to help with equipment and everything and figure that whole thing out because I had camera stuff, but I'm like, we're going to need other stuff. What quality are you looking for? Because we can shoot this on my camera, but like if you're looking for like a Netflix quality documentary, like we're going to need better shit. And so we went, we looked into renting it or whatever, and the equipment renting it wasn't going to be too much, but insuring it overseas was going to be a lot of money. Because you have to insure the equipment to be able to rent it. And at that point, I was like, well, if it's getting too close to the edge of our budget, how about we buy all of this stuff and I'll take it out of my pay. And then I know that I'm set up professionally, to essentially like a bet on myself type of situation where it's like, like I'm making, I was making like 10 grand for the project, but I only walked away with like $3 grand in cash. So it's like I knew well that I was like, I guess that was also a big risk. It felt like it didn't feel as big as, I already had a job, so it didn't feel like as big a risk as leaving your regular job because I wasn't losing that job. It was just like, oh, I'm going to go shoot a documentary. I get a cool camera. I get an extra $3K in my pocket. Cool. So that didn't feel like a huge risk, but it was. Yeah.
Like a sacrifice?
Yeah. Well, bet on yourself though. That's the ticket there. Bet on yourself, and you'll probably win.
Yes. Yeah. So we went out and did the Norway documentary. Was originally just kind of like, he's like, oh, you just follow me out there while I deposit the data. You know, we'll do a documentary about it. I'm like, well, you don't really have a documentary there. That's just a vlog.
Mhm.
You know, so I had to help him develop the idea into a documentary where we ended up talking to people out there about endangered languages. There's a indigenous culture in Norway known as the Sami people who had their language kind of systematically stamped out over time.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's meet up with some people and talk to them about that language and, you know, how that language was kind of, you know, how it was pushed aside and how it was almost completely disappeared and how it's now regaining relevance and, you know, who are the people that are saving it now and you know, where is it going in the future. And if we do all of that as a through line, then we can also show a reason why you're saving language data in the first place, because people don't think about the fact that languages are endangered. You know, there are languages that the more that everybody learns English and the more that everybody learns Spanish and everybody learns Chinese, they're going to stop learning other languages that are native to their culture. You know, so it's one of those things where I heard the idea, had never thought about the concept before, so I was immediately interested because all I watch is documentaries. It was like, oh yeah, this is great, let's do it. You know, we did that one, and that was kind of how we got on the path. We did one in Panama right afterwards, and then we got funding for the 3-episode series that we're doing now.
So where all have you traveled, and then what was your favorite place and favorite food from each place?
I mean, food is a huge part of it, you know, like it's, you know, like that's the main reason why I started taking cameras more serious in the first place was because I wanted to travel. I've always wanted to travel the world. Food is a big part of the reason why I want to travel the world. I will eat anything. Like I'll try almost anything. Like it's like, I don't go out of my way to get like the weird, gross stuff, but generally, generally I'll get one of the weirder things on the menu anywhere we go. But we first went to Norway. We went to Tromsø in Norway, and then we went to Svalbard. Then we went to Panama, and we went to Boquete in Panama. We spent time with like an indigenous culture that I like was in the jungle eating like indigenous prepared foods. Like I could see like the bananas are growing on the tree right there and they're getting pulled off of the tree and then I'm like eating them. Like for, you know, like it's like one of the craziest
That
things.
is an immediate like shift in climate. Like you're talking like freezing cold to like you're sweating.
Like 92 degrees, like just baking. And then we went to Greece. We went to Crete, specifically the island of Crete. We went to a couple of different places across the island of Crete, and then I just got back from Louisiana. We did a road trip around Louisiana in an RV. And next month is the last shoot for the series, and that's Ireland.
Nice.
Fucking A. Yeah. That's so cool, dude.
Yeah, so definitely I would say that Greece was my favorite so far.
Was the food amazing? I love Mediterranean
The
food.
food was so amazing. The food was really, really good in Louisiana too. Very, very, very good. But the food in Greece the average was like so good. You know, Louisiana, though, I would say like the average meal that I had in Louisiana is the best in the country. You know, spent lots of time in Las Vegas, and Chicago's got great food. New York obviously has great food, but like it was hard to miss in Louisiana is the thing. Like it's hard to get bad food someplace.
The whole Cajun Creole thing.
Yeah. So it's a travel show where each of the episodes is language based. So it's like you're traveling, you're eating the food, you're getting into the culture, but you're all doing it through the lens of like a niche language or something like that.
Do you guys like, where are you posting this documentary? Where will it be available to view?
We're making it for a production company right now, and they haven't really told us what they're going to do with it. I think ideally they're going to sell it around. They're going to try to get it, it bought up by a streaming service first and foremost. So I'm supposed to have it, wrapped up by like October-ish. At that point, it's like wait and see. Essentially, hopefully, it's good enough that somebody buys it, and
it sounds super cool.
Yeah. That's the definitely the one like bummer, not necessarily bummer, but it's like being able to do all this stuff and then being like, when am I going to be able to watch it? Where am I going to be able to watch it? I'm like, well, I don't know yet, but you will be able to, I promise.
So there's a 3-part series. So the next 3-part series, Greece, then Louisiana, then Ireland?
Yes.
So how does Louisiana fit in there?
Creole, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Okay.
like French, Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's
Gotcha.
Creole. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's really Creole. Talked to lots of people about Creole and
Okay.
Cajun culture and stuff like
Right
that.
on.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, no, I get it, but I'm saying Greece and Ireland's like way left and right field, and then Louisiana just seems.
Well,
That was part of the reason why I wanted to fit it in there too.
Okay.
When he had given a list of possible locations, that was one that I highlighted right away because that was the one that I'm like, it's in your own backyard. You're going to be less, not necessarily less excited, but you're going to be like, what? Like, it's going to be, people are going to be more curious about it because they're going to be like, wait, there's another language going on in the United States. Yeah.
So, is it Gaelic?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Cool.
Oh,
Yeah, we're going to be in Northern Ireland.
that's so
That is fucking cool.
I'm also like Irish food. I'm partial. They say it's like kind of a blander food, but like to go from like Mediterranean to like Cajun food to like traditional Irish food is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I will say that it's definitely the least, like as far as food goes, I'm the least excited, but as far as the culture goes, it'll be pretty interesting. It'll be pretty, be pretty cool.
They're the definition of meat and potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in Greece, it was just meat. I was just like, they just eat like a lot, lots of them just eat meat. Like there is like so much meat everywhere, pretty much.
Did you get to try authentic baklava?
Oh yeah.
I'm so
Oh yeah. I tried. I had lots of baklava, lots of souvlaki, which is actually what we call a gyro out here, a gyro.
Yeah.
We had lots of random like Greek local foods. Like what the camera person we had with us, Katerina, her cousin has a restaurant. We ate with them, had them make us whatever, and then we came back and cooked, and Chris cooked with them in the kitchen, and we had like a whole goat they cooked. And
that's cool.
They ate like the eye and stuff like that.
That's a little far for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm okay.
For me.
Yeah. I'll try all kinds of weird stuff, but like weird within reason, not weird just because it's weird. Weird because it's like an odd combination of things or something.
Well, like goat meat, okay, goat meat's okay, but now fucking the eyeball.
Yeah, it was good. They had the brain too.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't do the brain or the eye, but the goat was good. At least.
But like I do like cheeks. That's like the main thing. Maybe the tongue on certain animals. Like
I had lots of octopus this year. That's pretty good.
Love octopus.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Okay, well,
so we're about at an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I will ask a couple more questions and then we'll get you out of here if you're good with that.
Yeah, cool.
Perfect. So a couple things that I was curious about. How do you judge your like? I don't even know how to word this, but well, I guess it's about lighting, but I didn't know how to word it. So like, how do you choose which lighting to use per like clip? Like I don't know.
Like the style, you're asking about the lighting style.
Yeah.
Well, a documentary, lots of the time, obviously you're just shooting whatever's happening.
Okay.
But for me, because of the fact that we're traveling so light, we can't really, and the trips have to be so short, we don't have time to individually scene light.
Oh, cool.
What I generally am really, really good at doing is knowing which lights how to control lighting is the most important thing.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not adding light in, it's taking light away, and that's what does it. Because when you are, not to get too technical, but when you're shooting in 10-bit and doing the color grading, you have so much room to stretch things that if it's a little bit too dark, it doesn't matter. It's not going to look dark in post after I finish color grading it.
Okay.
So what we'll often do is position people according to the natural light, according to the windows. Lots of times we'll we'll just shut all of the lights off in the room and then put people, if it's a sunny day, you can put people close to a window and shut off everything in the room. And just kind of see how the lighting looks, see where you're getting good contrast, because that's what you really want. Is you want pockets of light and dark. You want a little bit of light on someone's face and a little bit of dark.
Yeah.
So generally, when we do any of our interviews, it's if it's not an indoor location that's like a public place, like if we're at a restaurant, there's not always a whole lot that we can do as far as turning off the lights.
Yeah.
But like if we're in a park and we're gonna shoot an interview out in the open in a park, we can find a bench where it's like, oh, the sun is hitting it at this angle right here. So if they're both sitting right here, then they'll have light on the same sides of their faces or something.
Yeah.
So you travel a lot and your equipment is expensive. You travel light. What is the most expensive thing you have ever lost?
I haven't lost anything too expensive. I'm pretty good about staying organized with the expensive stuff because that's the other thing too is it's like so much of it being electronic equipment, like it has to be in the carry-on.
Right.
It can't like it's not like the stuff in the suitcase type of stuff. So it always ends up being like my clothes.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like that's the things that get forgotten are always like, oh, like I really like that hoodie. You know, like
Well, that's better than like losing like serious equipment. You know?
yeah. So I cannot. Yeah, I don't think I've lost any serious equipment, but I have like had clothes that I love dearly turn up missing when I get home, and I'm like, oh no, you know, like I don't really, you know, like not that I'm, you know, like bragging, but I don't buy cheap clothes.
Yeah.
You know, like usually like I buy skater clothes and shit, so it's like I've definitely like had lost like $150 hoodies and shit like that. You know, like where it's like, you know, it's not equipment, but it's still it hurts just as
It's a
bad.
sentimental thing.
Yeah.
So one more question before I ask a wrap-up question. Is there any aspect of your job that you are still trying to do?
All of it. Yeah, I mean, I work, you know, you work in a field like this, then you're always trying to master all of it, knowing that you will never master any of it. Like, you just can't, you know?
Sure.
So it's like one of those things where I'm always trying to not necessarily master something, but always figure out which areas I'm deficient in and bring those up to speed. You know, because that's the thing is you get, you know, you start getting good at one part of it, and that part gets so much better than everything else that you want to do because that's the thing that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to build the skills that you don't necessarily enjoy building alongside of that.
So I'm going to piggyback off that question. Would you rather be the jack of all trades or the master of one?
I think I would go back and forth on it because I don't like editing as much. I love being able to tell a story though, you know, like, so it's like you get the story when you're doing documentaries really told through editing, you know, so like that part of it coming up with the idea of how the edit's going to flow, I love it, but I don't like the actual monotony of moving everything around on the timeline, even though I'm relatively good at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like one of those things where sometimes I'm like, gosh, it would be great if all I had to do was show up with my camera and run my camera for the day and then go home.
And be done.
Yeah, and be done. But there's also the fact that I love being able to see a full project through, you know, and I also don't know, you know, like I don't know that I would trust somebody to see my vision the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if I'm going to spend all of the time getting somebody else to see the way that I need it to be, you know, I might as well just do that myself. So it's like one of those things where some days when I wake up in the morning, because, you know, this thing is if I'm here, it's like I still like I woke up, I got to work at 5 this morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like you know, when you edit for 8 to 10 hours a day, it's like some days you wake up in the morning, you're like, I do not want to look at my computer screen. You know?
Yeah, one last question actually I lied. Who's your favorite director?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I have so many favorites. Yeah, probably like a tie between Alex Garland and Michael Mann.
Okay.
Okay.
Scorsese.
Yeah, Scorsese.
Love
Yeah.
Scorsese.
Quentin Tarantino.
Well, I find like lots of I find that now that I do what I do, it's the director of photography and the cinematographer that I notice more often than not, where it's like, oh, I like this movie and this movie and this movie. It was the same thing when I started making hip hop beats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I like this song, this song, this song, this song, and then I realized like, oh, they're all different rappers, but the same guy made the beat.
Yeah.
You know, like it's the same thing with movies where you're like, oh, they're all different directors, but it's the same cinematographer.
Okay.
You know.
Well, it's like I also really enjoy Wes Anderson, but some of his stuff is out there.
Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah.
But I just think it's beautifully compiled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. No, but what he's saying, it's like you're right. Different directors.
Yeah.
Timberland makes the beats and stuff. Sometimes
Yeah.
for like sing on it, but then that's like a variety.
Yeah. And you can, like before I even knew that's what I was identifying, it's like, oh, I like all of these songs. And then I realized like, oh, it's all actually because the beat's made by this guy. It was like, oh, I like these movies and they're all different directors. And it's like, oh, it's because the cinematographer is this guy.
Gotcha.
You find that like it's everybody's like favorite first are like Roger Deakins and Emmanuel Lubezki. And then most of the best movies that you've seen that win Oscars are those guys. Yeah.
I will say I do not care for M. Night Shyamalan.
I don't know enough about him.
Explosion.
Yeah. Okay. So, we'll go to random questions. Is there anything that I missed that you would like to share?
Not that I can think of specifically. That covered everything pretty well.
Perfect. That means we did our job. That's why I asked.
And we also give you the space if you want to do like a shout out or say anything that you want people to know.
Yeah, no, I mean, shout out to the community. If there's anybody out there that's doing anything for the people in their local community, like, everybody doing that type of work is the important work that we need done. It's what little I can do just being a skater as an older skateboarder, trying to facilitate things, even to the extent that the skate park Nixon was closed for half of the year for a long time. Like they would just keep the gate closed. Mm-hmm. And I had to fight pretty hard to get them to leave it open in the winter. I'm like, look, if it's open in the winter, if there's not snow on the ground, somebody could show up and skate. If you're not going to put a fence around the playground and close it up in the winter, then don't do it at the skate park. So.
I'm also pretty sure they took it out, didn't they?
No.
I'm sure.
No.
No. And what is your definition of success?
Success? It's just being able to enjoy life in general. It's not that there's not a specific bar for success. Success is different for everybody. There are some people who are very, very successful in their own idea of success and have very, very happy lives that I look at it and I'm like, that looks like a fucking death trap. That looks miserable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I could not live that life. It looks awful, but that person is happy to wake up every morning and they're happy when they go to bed at night. That's really all success is.
Awesome. Katie?
If you could choose one word to describe your entire journey from where you started to where you are now, and then even where you might end up, what would that one word be? The only stipulation. It has to be a word.
I don't know. I don't want to say surprising because I ended up where I wanted to be, when I was in high school, when I said, oh, this is what I want to be when I grow up, I'm actually doing that. But I'd still say it's surprising.
Right on. So 2 questions. A, will you sign our table when the camera goes
Yeah,
up?
absolutely.
Second, before that, every week I give out a gift card. I know you travel. So I didn't know, blah, 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 but we got you Starbucks gift card.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Out of town guests can give like a gas card too.
Nice.
Local. I'm like, well, he's local for now. So
He belongs to Coffee Man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Marker. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.